Hello again. It's really good to be with you. It's great to see how this YouTube pattern is coming together. Greta Garbo was a Swedish-American film actress. People who've never even seen one of her films often know from pub quizzes or something like that she once said in a film, "I want to be alone." And there's a couple of other films where that got repeated, but all sorts of comedians and so on have joked about wanting to be alone, speaking through megaphones in terrible accents. Not quite like Greta Garbo, but I want to start with thinking about being alone. Just before the verses that we heard as a reading today, just before that, Jesus has shared a meal with a huge crowd. He's broken bread, fed them in a hungry place. He's had a busy, tiring day, and he's exhausted. Long before mobile phones and laptops that we're able to watch these YouTube clips on, Jesus understood that if you have to recharge your battery, you can't just plough on and be busy and get involved. So he packs the disciples off in a boat, says, go and have a sail, and then he takes time apart. He prays. Not, I think, prays with a long list, probably not with a book, but he dozes, he unwinds, he focuses on God his Father. He looks at the sea or plants that are growing, rests into nature, simply unwinding, recharging. How in these lockdown days do you recognize, even though you're often alone perhaps, but there's a particular moment when you say, I need to recharge? And how do you do that? Have you learnt particular skills or things that renew you, nourish you in the lockdown? How do you bring your whole self, mind and body and spirit in a time and place and recharge? In the last few days, involvement with putting this together, I've been trying to remember a song title. I can find a fragment of a line, but I can't think of the song. The fragment of the song is something like, the hardest hour is just before dawn. Jesus has set himself to relax, to pray, to regain his energy. And as that energy builds, he ceases to only focus on his reflections for self, but he looks around, and out on the lake, a strong wind is blowing, and he can see the disciples can't sail because of the strength of the wind. They're rowing into a headwind. He moves from simply being alone to giving attention to the bigger, larger world around him. Early in the morning, just before dawn, to echo my song, he sets out to join them. What's the hardest time of day for you? For the disciples, certainly that day, it was in the dark just before dawn. But as well as reflecting for yourself, can I invite you to ponder, are there folk whose darkest time you see, to put inverted commas around it, if not literally, you know from an email message, a text, a stray conversation in the street, in the village, that in some way there is a sense that they are alone? Just as Jesus stepped towards the disciples, can you in some way step towards them? In all of the Gospels, but particularly in Mark, whenever Jesus is absent from the disciples, they end up in a mess. Whether he's asleep, as in the story that we looked at last week, or whether he's alone on the shore, as this week, somehow things just don't go easily. And they long for his arrival, his presence. The struggles of the lockdown have shaken us all. There are moments, hours, days or more perhaps, when God seems distant, Jesus somehow not present, the energy is not visible, and separated from the life of the congregation as well. We're feeling our batteries are almost drained. Jesus draws close to the disciples. He walks on the water. Amazing. He draws near to them. He's paid attention to them. He draws near to them and he walks on the water. That's mind-blowing. It's amazing. It's scary. But what he does is even more important, more impressive than how he got there. He says, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." And he climbs aboard. And is that perhaps what the whole reading is about? That Jesus longs, desires to come close to us and climb aboard the boat. In this slow exit from lockdown, I found a number of people wanting to say, this is how lockdown has been for me. I suspect that for all of us, there have been low moments, and trusting God has been difficult because the wind is in our faces and we don't know what to do. The truth of our reading is that Jesus is the disciples' friend, whether he's on his own and they're in the boat, whether he's drawing close to them in the storm, or whether he's on board and in a much happier place for them in the boat. Can we say for us that Jesus is our friend even when we're on our own, whether that's easy or not? Jesus is our friend in the attention of an email or a phone call or a conversation with someone. Jesus is with us in the small groups, in the gathering in church for prayers, in the ways we come together. How does Jesus find us as he found the disciples in the story? But if the passage is about the gift of Jesus to us, might we not also say, who is alone that I have noticed that I can step towards and in some socially distanced way climb on their boat? How can I both be supported by this story and encouraged in a bravery of living the life of faith, trusting that Jesus is and will always be with us in every time and place and circumstance? It's very good to be with you. I hold you in my thoughts and prayers as these days unfold. Amen.